Hey, kids, how would you like to hear this on the screen instead of the great show you came to see? That's what you sound like. Honest. Please cooperate and do your part in keeping this theater quiet so everyone, including you, can enjoy it.
What is up, everybody? Welcome into the DNVR Nuggets podcast. I'm your host, Adam Mattes. I'm joined by Brendan Vogt in the flower shirt here on this snowy Colorado day with a Cancun hat. He's got all the vibes.
Back in my bag, baby. How we living today, gentlemen?
Back in your bag. It's summer is a state of mind.
That's right.
Not true. It's a season.
It's actually a season, yeah. There's no
state of mind to be had. Also, D-line parentheses, Eric.
Yeah, D-line parentheses, Eric. This is our best intro song. I wish we'd use it all the time. It makes me. This is the best one. This is the top one. It brings the right vibes. It's sort of genre bending. It's just.
Wow, we're really analyzing it here. What else would you say about it? Really.
Well, I'd say that it puts me in a summer state of mind.
Guys, today we're presented by DraftKings Sportsbook, where you can use the promo code DNVR and get all kinds of. Every day, we were talking about this the other day, Eric. You go on DraftKings, and every day they give you like 20 different bets. That's like, if you bet on the Chiefs to win, and they do, and they either win or lose, you win $20. It's like, oh wow, it's a good, safe bet.
Well, what you need to do, you need to go in and you need to like monitor the ability to opt in on various promotions, because sometimes you don't have to take advantage of them right away. Like, you were there with me on Sunday. I was making a lot of bets where I was able to get extra 10% on the bet I eventually lost and didn't get to capitalize. But all the same, like, I had a whole bunch of those bad boys stored up, banked in. So check every day.
Today's, guys, we're going to do a draft show, and to help us with that, because we're a bunch of draft idiots, so what we had to do, we had to bring in one. I have a short list of people I trust for draft takes. You know, the Nuggets front office, I trust them. I believe I think they know what they're doing. They're pretty good at that, generally speaking.
Can we get them on?
I like the Jokic pick.
Our guest today is somebody I think all you guys should follow. He has his own Patreon, does exclusively draft stuff, and does a really good job on it. You might know him as Cosmos, at Cosmos on social, Brian Schroeder. Brian, welcome into the show, brother.
Yay.
What's going on?
Man, the crowd can't get enough. They love draft Twitter. They love it.
The crowd has a lot of enthusiasm here. So, the draft coming up very, very quickly here in, I think, just 3 weeks. But we're also about 4 months behind, I guess, what we usually would have expected the draft to be. Are you, has this year for you, Brian, been like more difficult to hold draft takes? Do you feel like your draft takes now are different than what they were in July of this year?
No, not really, and that's the tragedy of it. It's just been like, we've been kind of in a holding pattern now for like 3 months where, I mean, honestly, I'm of the opinion that you shouldn't change your opinions after February, March or so. Like every year there's always one guy who has like a big tournament run and gets like like Carson Edwards is a great example. He didn't look very good at all last year. DeAndre Hunter, fine player. I wouldn't have traded up for him. But
so you're sort of the opposite of Jordan, who like only does his scouting after March, like during March Madness.
Well, I think if you weren't paying attention and you start working on stuff after March Madness, that's fine. I'm saying like don't have opinions and then because one guy has 3 good games in March,
right?
Think like you can move a guy up, but don't move a guy up to be like suddenly he's a lottery player after he was like a second rounder. Shabazz Napier was a good example of a guy who got a lot of buzz, and like Shabazz Napier is a fine player, but I wouldn't have taken him in the lottery. I mean, he didn't get, but you know, like people were talking about that when he was going on that run, like top 10 pick. It's because people don't watch, and I think conference play is more important because the level of competition is pretty flat. Whereas in the tournament, you can play against, you know, if things go right, you could play against nothing but like 12 seeds all the way through. I don't really care if you look good against them.
Or just favorable matchups. Your cat really distracting.
Yeah, he's just sitting here meowing at me. What do you want?
Does he have good draft takes? I mean, we can bring him
Yeah, right. I think that means he disagrees with your conference take.
He's a
tournament guy.
He's never seen college basketball before. He's 4 months old.
We are cat-friendly show, so your cat is
That's
a very
true.
welcome addition to
I think
There
my
it
dog
is.
is in the.
Where's
Well,
Councilman at? Where's
Millhouse is in the window. You can see his little head behind my scooter. So
My dog always waits. I have a bell on my door, and he hits it. That's when he wants out. And every time I hit record, he goes over there and starts hitting it. Like, oh, you guys, you're recording now? Yeah, now it's time for me to go out. So yeah, there. I saw some players that, or some guys that do the draft. One theory I've heard about is that you weigh the good games more heavily because, especially for young players, that shows their upside. That's more what direction they're heading. But it sounds like you maybe feel opposite of that. You weigh every game or every instance that you see a player equally.
I wouldn't say every game, but yeah. I mean, a good example of that is, he had a good playoff run, so I guess it's not fair to call him bad. Lugens Dort was not a good player this year, he, in the first month and a half of his freshman season, his only season, he looked like Donovan Mitchell. He looked like a monster. He was shooting 60% of the rim. He was hitting all these pull-up threes, and then as soon as conference play started, he turned into to Lugens Dort. He was shooting 20% from three. He was terrible, and you weigh the conference games more. That's more what he is. He's not some incendiary 38-game scorer like he looked when he was playing against I don't know, Portland State or whoever they're playing. Playing nobody really.
Right. Well, let me get into the top question that I have here, which is this draft bad? Because that's all I've heard for the last year, that this draft has some okay players.
It's not. There's nobody in this draft you look at and say that guy is a star. That's the problem. The top 6 or 7 is really weak. After that, it kind of just is there's a lot of late lottery level guys. There's a lot of top 20 guys. That goes out to 45. So it's not a terrible draft. We'll probably get 15, 20 decent players out of it, but it's not a star level draft. It's a little bit like 2013 in that way. Although we didn't know Giannis, throwing out that Giannis was Giannis.
Right.
It's a little bit like 2013.
But again, nobody knew Giannis was Giannis. So is there a chance that there's a Giannis in this draft?
Yes. I mean, no, it's not fair to say that Aleksej Pokusevski is going to develop physically like that, but that's the guy if there is one.
That's the guy, huh? Wow, I like it. Poku. We're going to have a lot of Poku.
Oh, baby. I'm going to be so crestfallen when we don't get Poku.
Do you see a lot of, maybe Terrence Davis or, OG types, late first-rounders that can play right away?
Well, Terrence Davis was undrafted, but yeah, he should have been.
That's true, yeah, undrafted.
He should have been a late first-rounder, though. But yeah,
sure.
Yeah, there's a lot of guys like that. This is going to be a good draft to buy into, the mid-40s, or if you really want a specific guy.
Right.
That's where we live.
That's encouraging. Yeah, I was going to say, because
the Nuggets do that, the Rockets do
that.
Yeah, well, the Rockets used to do that. I don't know if they do that anymore.
Man, look at this comment here. Messiah Jeff Morton would know these things as Messiah, really big fan of Giannis before he.
I don't know if that's true. I saw Messiah one time at a grocery store and it did not come up.
You know what though? I think he would have known me because obviously he's Greek but has the Nigerian roots. Maybe there was a connection there. I don't know.
Well, Messiah was definitely would have known.
Yeah,
if anyone would have, it would have been him.
So, what is the deepest archetype in this draft? Is there a single there's a lot of this kind of guy?
Backup point guard kind of guys, yeah.
There's a lot of backup.
Maybe not backup guys, but there's a lot of there's probably 12 to 15 guys who could maybe be starters.
Okay. Yeah.
Can you
on the right. Yeah, like Monte Moore. Malachi Flynn is a good one from San Diego State. He's small, but he finishes really well at the rim. There's my cat. He was just really good. He's just a good shooter, excellent pick and roll player, plays defense hard. So he will be in the NBA. He could be a starter under the right Fred VanVleet circumstances. And then Cassius Winston's the other one I think of a lot. Cassius Winston's a monster. If he was 6'3", he'd be a top 5 pick. He's just 6'1". That he's that 6'1", and he's not a good athlete, but he is one of the best shooters. He's one of those guys who hits 44, 45% from three.
You can say to me. Yeah, but Brian, there's some things you can say about a guy that I'm out immediately, and that's one of them, man. The 6'1", but not an athlete. I'm well, if you're 6'1", I just feel
he's
you better be lightning quick.
Yeah, he's quick. He's not explosively quick, but he is a monster, just a really smart passer. That's why he's going to be a second round pick, but I think he'll stick. He's a different player than Monty, but what he is he's one of those guys who's above 45% basically everywhere. Like 45% on floaters, 45% twos, 45% long threes. So like he will shoot. I mean, worst case he's like Shane Larkin, and Shane Larkin is the best player in Europe right now, who should be in the NBA.
So here's what's interesting about where Denver's at. I feel like this is the first year where I'm almost looking at. I think I'm going to be harder on draft picks, especially of this type, because I'm looking at it going, there's guys that are good against the regular season, guys that are good against the Utah Jazz, and there's guys that are like, are they going to get us over the hump of the Lakers? You know what I mean? And it's just that curve is just so steep. So even when I hear these things about I don't think Denver's going for a point guard anyway. I think they're pretty well.
Yeah, I don't think they would.
Point guard. But when I hear, just to use an example, 6'1", he's got 45% from everyone. I'm like, great. If he's on the court, LeBron James, he's getting murdered, and just I don't know what he brings to the table. And Denver is in that position now where I think they need to be looking for that type of guy.
Yeah, that's the thing. They don't really need. I mean, if they were going to go for a guard, if Grant Riller fell, he might be the guy to look at, just because he's like a package. Like, you just put him in and he scores. Like, worst case, he'll be like Sessions was, but can shoot.
Okay, so he's like a. Man, I don't know if Denver needs that either. I mean, like,
but like, if they're going to go for one of these guards, you might as well go for the guy who has like, he will score, and like 20 minutes a game score. But that's if he falls. I'm saying if he falls to like the 50s.
Yeah.
PJ Dozier.
I apologize, everybody, because there's a little bit of a delay here, so it makes a little bit of this back and forth a little bit.
Yeah, sorry.
No, but PJ Dozier, because he's another guy that sort of acts as a draft pick, even though he's older. He's a guy that I think Denver looks at, okay, he's in the pipeline.
Right.
And he might as well be their third point guard.
Yeah.
Like, that's why they probably won't. But I'm trying to think. I can't remember offhand what his assist numbers were this year. He didn't really run. I mean,
he didn't play
nobody but Monty really runs that.
Yeah.
When Jokic is on the floor, so it doesn't really matter. But
yeah, he's very good though. I think he's a good pick and roll player. Like, he's got that height to get good angles on his passes and deliver. So I think he's both the third point guard, but also the fifth guard. Just overall, I think he'll play some shooting guard with them. Even though he's not a shooter, but he can play shooting guard. And there's a chance that he might actually be the fourth guard if Denver decides to use one of Barton or Harris to make a move this offseason.
Is Harris really a guard at this point?
I mean, he's like a 3 and D 2 guard. He's not doing any of the other stuff as a guard at this point. Yeah, right. He's not putting the ball on the floor or anything. I profiled today at the DNVR Desmond Bain, Brian. I'm curious for you. You like him in Denver?
He'd be perfect.
Bain train, baby.
Perfect is doing a lot of work here, Brian, because the dude
perfect for the role. If you're taking him in the 20s, he's perfect. He does exactly what you want that kind of guy to do. Where he's probably the best shooter in the draft. He's like big. He's good at defense. He's a good passer. Like he'd be one of the best fifth starters in this draft, if that makes sense. Just like the extra guy. I don't think he gets past Denver. Gets past Dallas is the problem. But
gotcha.
But yeah, go ahead. You think they'll take? Yeah,
my concern is
they go with a lot of guards.
He's almost like a tweener, right? Because he's that combo guard kind of wing type, but he's 6'6" with a short wingspan, so he's not really quick enough necessarily to guard ones at the NBA, maybe, and not necessarily long enough to really be a wing or a four. So I do wonder if like his skill set and his body type don't really match up at the next level, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, the last guy I had this concern with last year, so why I lowered him into the teens, was Tyler Hero. Now, he's older than Tyler Hero, but that was like my entire rationale for having him like 13 or 14, and I was wrong to think that, obviously. Tyler Hero has a negative wingspan. It doesn't hurt him as all. I mean, shooters, I don't know if it really hurts you, yeah. The short wingspan may actually help some shooters.
Right.
Because I think Korver has one. I know Hero has one. There's a couple other guys I can't think of offhand that it kind of simplifies the release if your arm's not as long.
His shot is kind of I don't like it though.
It's not pretty looking, huh?
It's not aesthetically pretty.
It goes in.
It's a really strange. We were talking about this. Like, I've never seen somebody jump like less to get their shot off, other than maybe me, Eric Weedham. Like, he is. He's just like, and none of that. But he shoots really deep also, and maybe that's because of it's difficult for him to get a shot off if
he's really strong.
Yes, he is. I could see that.
Yeah, so
Bulldog, man.
it doesn't bother me as much when you have a strange release. If it's consistent and if you are physically strong, it kind of helps. You can just kind of huck it.
That's what I'm saying. Sean Marion vibes.
So
I guess if you're looking for a shooter, the other guy I would look at in that range would be Isaiah Joe.
Right.
From Arkansas. He's much more like, aesthetically looks much more like a shooter. I think his defense is good. He's a good steals guy. That always bodes well. He's thin though. He's not a very big guy.
Right.
So that's kind of the trade-off you're making.
Sure.
Long?
Is he a long player? Because we love to.
I'm trying to think of what his. I think I know it's probably like 6'8". He's like 6'5". So
Okay.
I don't know if there's been an official measurement on that, but it looks like average wingspan, 6'7"-ish, 6'8".
We're all about trying to add those long boys in at Denver.
Mhm.
We need
All of
them,
a sudden,
baby.
they're big and long team. You know.
You laugh about this, but I'm telling you, to me, it's almost essential. This is why it's hard for me to get into a guy like Bane, because they have to be a Marcus Smart level player for me to kind of buy into it. Otherwise, I'm just I keep going back to this place where I'm like, the team's too small. Jokic, as much as I think he's a great defender, I just think length. I think Jokic is a great defender when flanked by length. Like, then he's really good.
Right.
But if you just don't give him that, then he's not good enough, I don't think, to make up. Again, unless it's a bunch of Marcus Smarts everywhere. But let's go back to Bane, because you said that you think Dallas takes him earlier. And this comes to one of my main questions for this draft is, everything's happening so quick this offseason. Do you think teams like Denver are going to have the ability to move forward? Or do you feel like there's going to be less draft night movement, picks moving up and down?
I have really no idea how to predict that. It seems like it seemed a few weeks ago that there were going to be a lot of trades. Minnesota was talking about it. I mean, the Warriors, I think it's almost hilarious at this point how desperate they are to move that pick.
Right.
They keep every other day there's another report about how they're in love with some other guy. It's like,
which means they're not in love with anybody, right? That's
yeah. They really want to. I think they would probably just take one of the centers if they had to, but they want to trade that pick desperately, and they should. They should. I think they're in a good position to do so. But the middle, I don't know about like the 8 to like 35, 36 area. I don't really know who's trading what. Like, it seems like you think the Celtics would be a lot more active because they don't really need 3 rookies. I mean, they definitely don't need 3 rookies. Do you think they'd be trying to move up to get, I don't know, Hayes or whoever they think they could really use? And maybe afterwards, after the draft, we'll hear about how Danny Ainge almost had a bunch of good trades. Right now, they've been more quiet than usual about it, and they usually like to talk about what they're doing. It does seem like teams are unsure of what they should be doing right now. Kind of, I don't know.
Well, they don't even know when the free agency is, or I mean, the teams have to be in such limbo right now. I know from even just talking to some of my guys, like, it's like, I don't know. I mean, if free agency begins the next week or whatever, I mean, nobody knows what.
Are there going to be? Do you think they'll start to limit the amount of visits and workouts and things? A lot of things are going to be done via.
Already happened.
Yeah, they have. Yeah.
And that there won't be any sort of like making up for that. Like, it's just going to still be a lot of just like gut feelings and Zoom calls.
Yeah, I mean, how much harder does this?
I mean, can you imagine flying these guys around?
Yeah.
No, yeah,
we're on a
none of
boat.
that.
You just have to go for it.
Sure. I mean, how much harder does this make that process? I mean, obviously we're all from the outside looking in, but is this in-person time essential to really?
See, I never thought it was personally. Like, I mean, that's probably I don't have that access, but like,
sure.
I'm mostly a stats and tape guy, so it should be simpler. Like, it should be easier to pick out the guys you want. But teams, and this is going to be a real problem in the top 10. It always is. It's why the number 2 pick has had such a bad track record of bust. They're not taking the player that helps them the most. They're taking the guy that could be an all-star in 5 years, and those guys very rarely are.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, R.J. Barrett's one of the less egregious examples, but like Derek Williams is a good example. Although Derek Williams was really productive, but I think if we were looking now, we'd realize he was a very flawed prospect. Thabit, obvious. Like, there's all these guys at the 2 spot who just were not ready to play.
There's interesting stories though, like Justice Winslow came to Denver and like notoriously tanked his workout because he didn't want to come to Denver. Like Josh Jackson skipped a workout with the Celtics, so they ended up taking what is his name that we all love now. Whatever. Anyway, I just wonder if there's going to be a lot of that. Jalen. Yeah, thank you. I just wonder if there's a lot of that like personality stuff that comes to fruition or comes to light when you're actually able to talk to a guy, get a sense of where his head at, and just sort of understand where he is in the world. I don't know. I mean, a lot about basketball is guys having to hang out every day for half a year. So I'm curious.
So
we'll see how that works.
This is where I would disagree. I'm sure with this is where I think I would disagree with guys like Brian quite a bit. And what I mean by guys like Brian is the guys that really get into the draft and are, the film, I think, takes an even bigger priority. I think the Nuggets have really learned about themselves. And I think they were the first team of these small market teams to realize the world has changed, the landscape has changed, the NBA has changed, and we just have to do things differently. And that premium on, quote unquote, good locker room guys. And when I say that, there's a lot of things under there. One is, okay, guys that are probably, Josh Jackson's a perfect example of this, right? Because I loved him as a prospect, but like the dude I think was in a lot of ways destined to fail for reasons that didn't have anything to do with basketball. And I think the Nuggets were like, we just can't afford those types. Like it doesn't matter if they're good or whatever. We just can't have them. We have to have guys that are not going to cause any issues or ask to be traded or any of these other things. And we have to have guys that are going to come here and get better than what they were projected to be, which we're going to give them that opportunity to do. So what I'm saying is I think that now, as opposed to myself 5 years ago, I emphasize the player development aspect of the draft way more than I would have 5 years ago. I feel like good organizations can turn okay prospects into good ones.
Yeah. I would say that they've kind of, maybe not deliberately, but they've sort of gone back on that the last couple of years, taking guys who had obvious, had reports of like,
Right.
Bull. The stuff with Bull was just that he was lazy. Like he just was not, like, didn't seem like he was very interested, but he should have gone higher than he did, obviously. The foot injury was the only thing I was really concerned about. And the fact that he did have some bad games. That Iowa game he played he had good numbers, but they ran him off the floor basically. They just attacked him every play and he just couldn't do anything. But like that, he still should have been a top 20 pick, obviously. The guy has ridiculous traits. But Michael Porter's the obvious one.
What have you seen from him so far? What have you seen from him now?
Well, I was high on him.
Some minutes.
His first 2 or 3 weeks in college, I had him number 2, and then he got hurt, and then the Iowa game happened, and then he got hurt again, and that's the only real reason it might have been screwed. So like that's always concerning with a guy that size. But no, I mean obviously in retrospect he could play. We don't know. He may end up hurting his foot again and not play again. It could happen. But the talent was always there. The strangeness of him too. That's a thing. That's one of the reasons I'm a Pokusevski guy, is that there's not really a type. And even those two guys are very different, even though they have similar skills. But like the weirdness of what he is I think that's become a more interesting thing for me in the last couple of years, of just taking these guys who are strange.
Well, Denver's been all about it.
Mm-hmm.
Is there any chance Poku could fall that far?
Seems like it.
Yeah.
It doesn't sound like the only team I heard that was the Celtics. I think were talking to him a little. And then Minnesota at 17 was the only other one I heard had showed any real interest. Mm-hmm. Now this is all stuff that is publicly available, so that doesn't mean much of anything, because as we all know, what teams are saying to people in the public is not
right.
The guys they're actually interested in, they're not talking about, especially in that and a lottery area. Unless you're the 76ers and you tell everyone for 3 months you want Matisse Thybulle.
So I have to share this story about when I was at Sloan a few years back, and you hang out with all the front office people, the different, like, not the lower level ones, I'm not there with Danny Ainge, but, scouts for the Knicks or assistant GMs and this or that, and they're all sitting there talking, and it was like a live version of what you're talking about. Like, they were all talking to each other, but it was almost like they were all not really. They were all just like trying to like
talk
I
around
don't know how
each
to explain
other.
it. They were all sharing exactly the information. Kind of like hey man, you know what? If there's a way we could help each other, but they were just playing a game, and you're just kind of like, wow, this is weird to watch in real life. Guys like lying to each other's faces. So it happens for real. With Pokusevski, everybody's intrigued about him. Of course, we have a big Serbian population, so we have a bunch of people following. But what do you think? What do you give us your breakdown on who he is?
He is kind of a savant. He's one of those guys. He's one of those guys who just sees basketball in a different way than other players. Now, part of that, I think, is he was playing in the Greek Second League, but even when he was playing in the ANGT, which is a higher level, the Next Generation tournament for Euro Cup and EuroLeague guys, he was trying stupid passes and they were working. And that's always a weird sign. But he's the best way to really, I guess, advocate for him is how many 7-footers are legitimately good dribblers, can shoot pull-ups off screens, setbacks, and block a lot of shots, and and are good rebounders. He's a good rebounder. Like even though he's thin and weak, and he's not like resistant to contact. He's just sometimes he gets pushed around because he weighs 196 pounds. But he does get rebounds, like he high points rebounds and goes after them really well. So that actually gives me some confidence. He's basically at the point where if you can guarantee he'll gain 20 pounds, which he's an 18-year-old,
right.
He probably will gain 20 pounds.
Yeah.
20, 25 pounds. I think he will be a good NBA, like a very good NBA player. And potentially like doing direct player comps is always silly, but like some sort of Rashard Lewis, Lamar Odom combination.
Wow.
Because he's that kind of passer. He's an absolutely incredible passer. Yeah.
So what is the biggest hang-up then, Brian, when we see him as low as we do in mock drafts? Is it size? Is it just competition? That same thing we always do?
Strength and competition level, yeah.
Yeah, gotcha.
Which his competition level was low enough that it is,
legitimate concern.
It is a little concerning. But he also, it's one of those things that's not his fault at all. They obviously, Olympiacos was trying to they didn't want this to happen. They didn't want NBA teams to pick up on him. So they probably could have had him on their main team and he could have played serious minutes. They just were hiding him. A friend of mine made a joke in a Patreon post that if you took his shot chart, it would spell out "help me," because I think he was very obviously bored. Like he was one of those guys. Sometimes you see it in high school where a guy has to play in the Milwaukee Public League or something, and it's like this guy's just way too good for this talent level.
You're talking me into him actually. Now I'm kind of.
If he was at 22, I would take him. I wouldn't even think twice.
Is he going to stay in Europe?
No, he's coming over. He wants to.
Oh wow. He's
been learning English for 4 or 5 years. His English is just pretty good from what I've seen of him.
If he was in Denver, what would you do with him as far as come over or not?
That's the concern is because they don't have a G League team. Yeah.
Right. So I'm going to say this. I am now fully in I don't think the G League team thing matters. I actually think in some ways maybe it's a benefit to Denver, in part because they can send him to whichever team they feel is best, so they can literally.
Yeah, I would like to have the option. Is what I would. But I mean, they could keep him on the bench and just have him on the team. He doesn't have to play immediately. That's the thing. That's the other thing. They don't need a power forward right now. I mean, even if Millsap leaves, they could probably just start Porter.
Yeah.
And
who is?
And Jeremy, if Millsap, I think so. Yeah, right now, ideally he's a center, but I think until he gets a little more, he can't really score. The biggest problem, he has good touch. The biggest problem with his strength is that he just can't. He can get into the rim, but he gets bumped off a lot, trying to hit layups, and you're not going to shoot floaters at that size that much. So,
yeah.
Man,
he's listed as a shooting guard. For their team.
That's what I was just gonna say. That's just weird. I was gonna say, I don't, you're not gonna see much of this sort of realize or manifest on the court this season. But Poku, Bol, and even MPJ, all these guys in the wings, when it starts with a 6'11" point guard in Jokic, it just fits right into Denver's kind of new avenue of this positionless, size without sacrificing spacing type of deal. Mm-hmm. And I think that's the appeal for a lot of Nuggets fans.
He's at the point where the only 6'11" plus guy I can say is a better shooter is MPJ that I've seen in the last few years.
Wow.
And then maybe this guy in high school, Jabari Smith, but he's 17 years old, so it's a little early.
A couple years away. So let's get really weird here, Brian, because I am fully of the belief that I'm just not concerned with the fact that Denver has overlapping talents. I think Jeremy Grant and Michael Porter can play together. I think those guys can play together with Jokic. I even think you might be able to throw Bull in with those other three guys and still play. You end up sliding Michael Porter to 2, which he's not really, and the defense gets weird. But I just think it doesn't matter because all of those guys can shoot. Most of them can handle at least adequately. And at the end of the day, I think it works out. So do you feel like Poku could come to the Nuggets and develop alongside these guys, even though it doesn't make sense that you're playing 3 power forwards at the same time?
It wouldn't matter to me, especially where they're picking. If they're picking in the top 10 and there was like a wing like Devin Vassell or some guy I think is like a real wing available, then I would take the wing. That's sort of how I am. I go in tiers. I'm a tiers guy, and if there's guys in the same tier and I need like a guard more than a wing, I take the guard. But I'm not gonna jump way down to take like some guy in the like. I don't know, a guy like, I'm a big fan of this guy Nate Hinton. I love him. I wouldn't take him at 22 if Pokusevski was available because he's just a lower tier guy. And I think teams have proven, like Torrey Craig's a good example. If you can find an NBA caliber guy out there, there's always going to be some 6'7" guy who can play something.
Right.
Like they need wings, but like I wouldn't. If a player like Pokusevski or like even Killian Hayes somehow fell, like I wouldn't worry about it.
What are the odds that Pokusevski just turns out to be not a player at all? I mean, that's always the risk.
See, like Dragan Bender is a guy who kind of is similar, but the difference is that Dragan Bender was afraid of contact, like did not want contact. Pokusevski, he will hit people. He just usually gets the worst of it. So yeah, I mean, he could just flame out, but I think he could just be not a good offensive player outside of the shooting too, and the passing, which is a concern. But his instincts are so good that I'm pretty sure he's at least going to be decent. Like the idea of him not being a player at all, it'd be like a 0% percentile outcome or like a bottom 5. Like I really feel like, and if you take him at 22,
yeah,
like it's whatever.
With that flyer, right?
We went through the last 10 number 22 picks, and there were some real gems in there. There was like 50% good, surprisingly good players, and then there was 50% guys that drafted 4 years ago. You already forgot about them because they never came. They never panned out.
Yeah.
How hard will it be for a rookie? I mean, this is what's nice about Pokusevski is if you get him, you don't. I mean, he just doesn't play this year, and that's great because you don't need him to play this year. But
if he plays this year, it's because he is more ready than we thought. Like he's not. Right. Yeah, it's not going to be an emergency thing.
So, but that's what's nice because Denver can afford that, and it kind of fits a pattern that they've established now with Monte Morris, then Michael Porter, and then Bol Bol. All of those guys took 1 year off before getting on the court, and it worked out for at least 2 out of the 3 so far. And I think it'll work out for Bol Bol that same way. But how hard is it? Forget Pokusevski, everybody else. I don't think any rookies are making a huge impact this year, just because there's not going to be any time for those guys to establish themselves play.
I think a guy like a Kongwu, like the defense guys, I think could have big impacts. Or like if the Pistons or the Knicks take a point guard, that guy's going to have to play. But like other than that, yeah, I'm not. The only guys I really feel confident are like some of the seniors will probably, like Desmond Bane, Riller. These guys will probably be able to play roles. But yeah, I don't think there's going to be a combination of this not being a big star draft and the short turnover, no summer league, anything like that. It's going to be tough.
Right. All right, let's go to some of the other players. So Precious Achiuwa is another one that I've heard connected to Denver, but it sounds like he's flown up the draft boards. I mean, 3 months ago he was back there. But I just want to do the scouting report because you never know. Denver could move up in a draft. How would you rate his fit with Denver, and what can you tell us about him?
Precious is interesting because there's almost 2 Precious Achiuwas. If he's a center, I'm a big fan. Like I would probably take him 13, 14, 15 because he's a good defender. Really good rebounder. Like he's a great athlete. Gets out and runs to the rim, runs like crazy. Like he really overpowered people physically in the American, which is a decent conference. If you're drafting him to be a wing, I don't want nothing to do with him.
Really?
It's not even that like his defense will still be okay. If you're drafting him as a wing, you're gonna give him the ball and let him dribble, and he's just not. Like he takes the worst shots. Yeah. Even in like the Hoop Summit, he would take like Kevin Durant shots. He's not Kevin Durant.
Sure.
Now you can work on that too. But that's why I think once you draft him, you want him to be a rim runner for a couple of years. He could probably shoot standstills. Like he's got a decent shot, but he just has bad selection. So you really need to make him not do that if you can avoid it. That's why the Wiseman thing was really good for him, because when Wiseman left, he was the starting center at Memphis, and he just got rebounds and ran and dunked and looked great most of the time.
Right.
But yeah, he's also old. Like he's almost 21, I think, as a freshman. So you're kind of like, if he was like 18 and he played like that, you'd be like, okay, you can work on it. Like he's not that much younger than Brandon Clark was. It's like you need to know what you are at this point.
What do you think about this take that I'm just it's like a half-baked take, but I wonder if the old thing doesn't matter as much for Denver, especially for that
Probably
type.
Not.
Because I think you only get these guys for a handful of years anyway, right? I mean, you can control their rights or whatever, but the further Denver gets in, they've got their core guys. I mean, I think Denver, if they're going to win a championship, it's going to be because of Jamal Murray, Nikola Jokic, Michael Porter Bowl, and what they do with those players. So not necessarily with them, but if they either grow that core or flip them for something that wins them a championship. The other guys have to be good on the, sort of on fitting into that. And if you draft a 21, 22-year-old, in 3 years, they should be in their prime. Whereas if you draft an 18-year-old, in 3 years, they're 21. They're still really young, and by the time they're in their prime, they're moving on from you. So I wonder if that's not a bad thing for the types.
Yeah, it's a bad thing for him if you're taking him, if he goes in the top 10,
right?
Teams, because when you take someone in the top 10, you take them to be a star. That's the idea. So like,
I'm back, baby.
You just did the sneak out and the sneak back in. Yeah.
Hold on, were you guys talking that whole time? You didn't just stop the podcast?
We were.
The hell?
We're on your boy Precious Achiuwa, though, and whether or not his age is a positive or negative for Denver.
His age is a negative if you're taking him and expecting him to develop into some kind of star. But if you just, like I said, if you just take him to be like a rim runner, guy who can switch pretty well for a 6'9" guy, runs, dunks, maybe shoots some spot up threes once in a while, his age doesn't matter at all. But I'm talking more like with what he's being viewed as now, like the way he's kind of gone up in the top 15, someone's going to take him and think that he's a potential star, and like that's if you're taking a 22-year-old, 21-year-old to be a star, they better be ready. They better have a
lot of
defined
people
role.
They talk about, when we talk about these front court players, they're like, well, does he fit with Jokic? And I'm less concerned with that for a couple reasons, but the first is I just think everyone's a good fit with Jokic, unless you're a bad basketball player. But if you're like, if you have any talents, Jokic seems to be very good at making those talents work. But I'm more interested with a player like Precious Achiuwa, and then another one that I want to bring up to you here at Jalen Smith. We can kind of talk about both of them. Are they good fits with Bol Bol? Because early on, and maybe as early as next year, probably not this year, but as early as next year, that just might be your backup 4-5. And that is as important to me as if they fit with Jokic, who I think we already know who's going to be playing with Jokic.
Yeah. Precious and Jokic, I mean, Precious is not going to get physically pushed around.
I just love saying Precious and Jokic. It just sounds
I say Precious Jokic all the time. He's Precious.
I know,
Yeah.
But for once you're talking about two people.
Precious's older brother is named God's Gift.
Wow, that's incredible.
Is that one name?
Very hard to be humble.
Yeah.
Is that a hyphenate or?
I think it's an apostrophe after God.
I went to elementary school with a Godspeed and God's Will, and thankfully they got in trouble all the time. So I was constantly on the intercom, just Godspeed, please come out.
Precious and Bol, though, like Precious is pretty strong, so I think that would be, that'd be an interesting combination. Jalen Smith is interesting because he is very thin, but also built. Like he's one of those like 3 or 4% body fat guys.
An Adam type.
A lot of upper body strength, though. I think.
Well, you would think the thing about him that's interesting that kind of plays. He probably can shoot. By the way, he's a good shooter, but he was the one guy in the Big Ten who was able to physically push around my guy Xavier Tillman, who. Xavier Tillman was 6'8" and the Big Ten is the one conference where everyone is a 7-footer except for this guy, and he pushed all these guys around like children. Jalen Smith was the one guy who I think actually shot and played better against him than he did against the rest of the Big Ten. You wouldn't think that with a 210 guy. So Jalen may have some more room to develop physically. Like he's built really well. He looks great. He's interesting looking, and he plays interestingly. Like I like Jalen pretty well. I think he'd be a guy if you really want to take a front court guy there. He'd be interesting.
What position is he in the NBA? Is he a 5 or a 4?
Both doesn't really matter.
Doesn't matter. Okay.
Positionless basketball, baby.
I just think from defensive versatility.
I think ideally you want him to be a 5, but he's not like immobile, so
right.
He's not gonna.
Yeah, I'm intrigued by Jalen Smith in part because Denver might need a backup center. I'm really big high on Bol. Like
What, Mason Plumlee's not doing it for you?
He is though. I actually like Mason Plumlee.
Mason's fine.
Everybody outside of Denver hates him. I'm like, guys, you only hate him when he eats minutes of guys that are clearly better.
I think he had a pretty rough playoff stretch, though. I don't think
he always has a rough playoff stretch.
He's going to always have a rough playoff stretch. But he had a great regular season stretch, and that's sort of the role of the backup center is to be good in the regular season. And
people don't like him in relation to his salary. Like that's the problem is that the salary sets the expectation for whatever he thinks that every player is going to be able to accomplish. So he gets paid too much when everyone hates him.
He did play on an Olympic team.
Oh,
yeah, he was a gold medalist, if I'm not mistaken. So it was funny. Who did he make it over? Oh, because they were just making a big. Oh, Bam, Adebayo, right? He made it over Bam, which is kind of hilarious.
Probably the right choice, I would think.
Yeah, you never know.
I have a feeling personally they only took him because they wanted someone to, if they played like Serbia or any of the teams that have actual bigs, just to have somebody to foul.
Hey man, the Lakers won a championship with that this season with Dwight Howard. I mean, Dwight Howard and JaVale McGee had one role in that series, and it was just to foul Jokic and hopefully sucker the referees into calling just enough fouls on Jokic, bullshit ones on Jokic, and guess what? It worked. So that's a good role. It's a really good role.
Yeah.
So Jalen Smith and Bol, Precious and Bol, which combo do you like better between those two as a 4-5 combo?
I think I would say Jalen and Bol just because they can both shoot. And just both shooters. Jalen was an interesting guy because he came into college with the reputation as a shooter and he played a lot of 4 his freshman year and he was just in a bad spot playing with Bruno Fernando, who got most of the touches. So he just didn't shoot and wasn't very impressive. And he had a really good year last year. He bounced back. He's their best player, and they were I think they won the Big Ten regular season. They were a good team. Maryland. Famous Big Ten team, Maryland. Hate it.
Yeah, right.
Strange.
It is weird, man. I grew up the Maryland Duke. They had like a great. I don't know. Do you remember this, Eric? Were you a college basketball guy? They had like a great like rivalry for several years. Some of my best college basketball rivalries.
Yeah, I just remember college basketball used to be a thing that people were interested in outside of one like weekend a year, and now it's like really just been reduced down to that. So I do remember people walking around and talking about rivalries, and now I don't know. I don't even think that exists anymore.
Yeah, Brian, do you like college basketball for college basketball, or do you like it solely through the lens of the draft?
I like it more than they did a few years ago. They've had some quality of life improvements. The new 3-point line worked really well. I mean, there were some bad numbers, but it really weeded out who was and wasn't a shooter. Right. They've got some better like pace of play stuff going on. It's better than it was. You don't get those, even like the Big Ten, which is notorious for big, slow Isaac Haas, 35 posts up a game basketball. It was better. It was a little more guard oriented. I think that helps.
I know you scour through a lot of film. Are you making an effort to catch college games live and in the moment, start to finish?
When I can, yeah. I work second shift, so sometimes it's kind of hard. But yeah, that's the benefit of ESPN Plus. We watched.
Yeah, it's funny. Like I just in general, like I don't watch much college sports. I'm like much more interested in the pro level of almost everything, like where you just all of the best players have been put in the same league, and then you really see who the best is. But there's just it's fun when you do watch college basketball, and it's for me it's like hard to evaluate because the game is just so different. Like it's just like it especially when you're watching college football, like you watch a good quarterback play a college football game, and his receivers are always 15 yards open, like just no defenders anywhere on the field. It's like a lot of the same with college basketball. It's just like so frenetic and crazy and fun to watch.
A
lot of floaters, yeah.
Yeah.
You get those stretches.
Gary Harris's just everywhere.
You get those stretches where, it's weird that you'll get like. You will sometimes get like a Kentucky Duke game where there's like 8 or 9 pros, right. And like, oh, this is like real. And then you'll get like that same Duke team will play like I don't know, Pitt or somebody, and it'll be like accountants. Everybody's an accountant.
Yeah.
But the fun thing for me with college is when you do get the Zions once in a while, where like watching Zion play against like
accountants.
It's so funny. It's like watching like old Herschel Walker tape where he's just like running over like 180-pound linemen. It's like that seems unbelievable that you're playing the same sport at this point. I don't know what's going on.
Zion Williamson 360 open court dunk that he has is one of the like greatest. Just I don't want to say plain dunk, but it's just like a non-contested wide fast break. But when you watch it, he's like his waist is at the rim. You're just like holy hell.
I can't get over the idea that he and Jokic are good at the same game.
Yeah,
kind of the same position, really. They're like, so I want to ask also about Tyler Bay. This might be the last one we have time for, but he's another one that I've just heard connected to, maybe a guy that would fit for the Nuggets. What do you think?
I like Tyler Bay a lot. He's wing size, but he was like a college center. That's the weird thing about him. But I don't have I don't mind that as much. He's a good shooter. He just didn't shoot. Like he would take like 2 a game, but his form is fine. Like he should be able to hit open shots. Like he's not like Andre Robertson where he's just not going to be able to shoot.
Right.
He's not going to create with the ball at all or anything like that. But he's a great deflections guy, like great offensive rebound guy. That's the thing that really plays up. Rebounding generally translates. He was one of the best offensive rebounders in the country at like 6'7". But he's a good athlete too. He's not like a plotting like I love Xavier Tillman. Xavier Tillman is a good athlete, but like he's not an under the rim guy. Like he gets above the rim, so he'd be an interesting guy. I think if they thought Jeremy wasn't going to come back, I think he'd be a guy you look at to kind of play that. I mean, he's not that level athlete, but he's not that far off. I think if you really knew you needed an extra 4, I think he'd be an interesting choice.
Is there anybody else that you think for the Nuggets makes sense?
The thing is maybe Leandro Bolmaro could be a guy if he's still there.
Yeah.
He's weird though because he's a guard more. He's 6'7", but he is more of a guard. His best attribute is his ball handling and his passing. But like he's got good size. Like he's got good. I think he's only like a +1 or +2 wingspan, but he's 6'7". That's not that's not as big of a problem. Let me think here if there's any like other. Like me, Tyshawn Alexander might be a little early for him from Creighton. He's good, but he's more of a 2. If somebody falls, if RJ Hampton or Neesmith is a great guy for a team like that because he's going to shoot. That's all he does. I don't know. I'm not a Jaden McDaniels guy, and I know he's going to get some buzz in that area. He just can't score. You can't be like a 48 true shooting guy and translate.
Half of these guys in the draft, when I read their profile, I'm like, oh, okay, it's Torrey Craig again. Okay,
I know, yeah.
Like so many Torrey Craigs in the draft.
Jaden is 6'10" and like looks good, and he likes taking pull-up shots. He just sucks at them. So like, I'm not a big fan of him. Tillman, I think, is a fun guy. I mean, he basically is Paul Millsap, so it's a little redundant, but also he's Paul Millsap, so that's not.
I would take more than.
I would take a Paul Millsap for sure.
A guy whose best traits are boxing out, setting screens, playing team defense, short roll passing, and scoring at the rim. Like, nothing wrong with that.
Yeah, this might be my favorite prospect now. I'm gonna have to really
just like a little
new Paul Millsap, baby Mill.
And like, if you put real stock into character, Xavier Tillman is the character guy in this draft. He's a wonderful guy.
Sold.
I mean, he's listed as Xavier Tillman Sr. already because he said in an interview in an interview a couple. Well, he just had a son like 6 months ago.
Yeah, I mean,
but he said
in plus nor minus for me. That's just a
well,
fact.
my plus for it is he said in an interview, I guarantee I'm going to play harder than the rest of these guys because they don't have families to feed. And then he basically threatened that he would beat the shit out of anyone who tried to stop him from succeeding in the NBA. But like in a very friendly, nice way.
Yeah.
Let's do it.
Yeah.
There's like threatened violence.
Paul Millsap combo. Let's get it, man. If Paul Millsap,
Xavier is like great guy.
Beef, yeah. All right, this is the last one I have for you before we have to get out of here, Brian. And this is a tough question. I doubt you've been asked this one. I know you talked to a lot of people at the draft, but the Nuggets have gotten the Will Barton types from other teams. They've gotten, PJ Dozier has turned out these guys that maybe. My question is: are there guys that you were high on 2 or 3 seasons ago that haven't quite panned out how you thought, but you think, ooh, This is a guy that I think is ripe for the plucking.
Well, Zaire Smith may be that guy in a few more months here if he doesn't start getting some minutes. I still love
you were
Zaire
a big
Smith.
Zaire Smith guy, weren't you?
Freak athlete. He's had the worst luck. He broke his foot. He had an allergic reaction and almost died. Like,
Yeah, that was tough.
Oh yeah.
he's had such a weird career so far. Let me look here really quick. Because I know there's guys.
Nuggets, his luck will change. That doesn't sound right.
So I would have said talking about like a Devontae Graham type.
Sure.
Yeah, but
I mean,
not him anymore.
not him
But like
anymore.
a guy who could be that, because I like Devontae a lot. Or like Melton was a guy like that. Those guys are all starting to really pan out now. Is the problem?
Yeah.
Gary Clark had a good run with the Magic. He'll probably stay there. Yeah.
The nice thing about Denver is, they don't need the star type. They can take the, the good player that's just like, hey, he fits, and he's really good.
I would have said Edmund Sumner, but I really feel like his injury kind of, hasn't looked great.
We go back even further here. What do you think about Aaron Gordon going forward? Do you think he just kind of missed the boat?
Yeah, he's fine.
But I mean, again,
don't know.
he's not a star. Like I think his star window has closed. But can he be the maybe not as good as Iguodala, but like an Iguodala type where it's like, hey, he was miscast. He's the fourth best player on a team, and he's really good at that.
I for a while I always thought that he should be a center, but I don't. And that may have passed by at this point. He just doesn't want to do it. Like I remember there were rumors that the Bucks wanted him to play next to Giannis, which would have been interesting.
That would have been fun.
But yeah, I don't know.
I like this one, Derrick Jones Jr.
They're future Chicago Bull Derrick Jones Jr.
So that means you like him then. That's
Well, yeah, I love Derrick Jones. I've always liked Derrick Jones. He's a good example of a guy who, like Pokusevski, this is weird comparing them considering one's an elite athlete and Pokusevski's like a fine athlete, nothing wrong.
Yeah.
But he's physically can't stand up to contact, but he doesn't shy away from it. Like he'll get hit, and that right there has made the difference in him staying in the NBA. I think because he can play defense. Like his defense is solid, and he's one of the best athletes on the face of the earth. So it's always a good.
Giving Jokic a super athlete like that would be fun. I mean, they had Fareed and they were fun together. What other super athlete has Jokic had?
Jeremy Grant.
Jeremy's probably the closest. He's a good athlete. Yeah, he's a good athlete.
He's a great athlete if you just get an open gym and ask guys to do cool dunks.
Yeah.
Talk about going away from contact, though.
I do feel like Jeremy does. He still surprises people with his burst, though. Like on cuts, like he is very fast. So yeah.
Jeremy Grant might be another example of this, though, who was like a good prospect that kind of grew, and then I think the Nuggets got him at a perfect moment where it was like, okay, he's probably better than people realized.
This is why you may be making the argument for Precious Achiuwa. Like he's not a Derrick Jones level athlete, but he is like 240 pounds and is like a legit above the rim guy. And if you're just looking for a cutter, if you can just make him do that, I'm in on Precious. But I just don't think that's going to happen. I've seen him play enough at this point.
If you end up thinking of any more of these like bargain guys that you think might come up, you can hit me up. You can
CC Tim Conley.
To me, this is actually where Denver improves their roster more than the draft or even free agency or whatever. It's like, they ended up trading, Monte Morris or PJ Dozier, and you're like, I didn't want to.
I'll give you a guy right now if he doesn't play for the Grizzlies, Jonte Porter.
Oh yeah, well he's gonna play. Yeah, no, we wanted him to be taken by Denver for sure.
Yeah, if he doesn't run with the Grizzlies, then pick him up. Unless he just physically can't play, which I think he'll be fine.
I think the Nuggets might have as many guys as you can take that are like, as long as they stay healthy guys. Yeah. Because you can have a few of those, but when you have like 6, then you end up, they all get hurt, and you're just like, well, we should have known better.
I'd be excited about Jonte again. Just so I could watch him outplay his brother more. I always enjoy doing that.
Yeah.
He's the perfect guy. Like he's the perfect guy to have with him, Michael, because he's good at all the things that Michael's not good at.
Are you higher on
like
Michael?
Tweeting?
I know you were.
I'm higher now. Again, aside from the personal stuff, I was worried about his back.
Sure.
Because I've had lower back injuries.
Still am, by the way.
Yeah, but nothing has changed with that.
No guarantee that a guy who has 2 back surgeries plays more than like 3 or 4 years, but the talent is I mean, he's one of the best. Yeah. I'm putting more stock into pre-college stats, and in EYBL, the 3 guys in the last 7-8 years who had the best numbers were him, Zion, and Cade Cunningham. That's pretty good. Right. Pretty good company. So
yeah, you're a big. Oh, actually, I wanted to ask you, man. We have more, so I'm gonna run us just a little late. I apologize. I like
Harry
this one,
Giles is an interesting guy. Yeah,
Giles
Harry
is
Giles is interesting.
I've always been a Giles fan until I saw him in the locker room this year. So tiny, man. He's really small.
Get that male form up.
It is. Well, I'm saying like he's a center, and you see him, and he's Kenneth Farid size, and you're like, I don't know, man. Like,
did you tell him that
tall
when you
nor
saw
big.
You're like,
did you
look
it?
bigger on
You
TV.
look kind of small.
This is the guy you could get away with that more than like I think like I could or like a 6-foot guy could, but you could say that to a guard, I think, and they would be like, oh well, maybe this guy
Probably
knows.
say that vote.
But like just
too
thinking
good.
of,
They're not getting rid of Bagley's not going.
Bogdanovic may be a guy though. Bogdan.
Just to say Serbians and like all of our, you'll gain 1,000 followers.
Yeah,
from
you're
the
riling up
show.
the base today, man. You're saying
But, like,
all the right things.
they don't
Bielitsa, yeah, he could be great.
They don't use Bogdan like they should. Like he's a great shooter.
What about like Nemanja Jokic?
I love Nemanja too. He's great.
I wanted to actually ask you quickly before we get out of here. The next couple years are going to be crazy because it sounds like there is an enormous amount of talent coming in. This was the last sort of down year of the next 2 or 3. It sounds like. Is that an appropriate assessment?
Yes, unless a lot of these guys completely fall flat, which can happen. You know, there's a running thing where the number one high school guy consensus is never. It was Ayton. Ayton's good, but it was like R.J. Barrett, Harrison Barnes, Harry Giles. Harry Giles got hurt. That's not fair to him.
Right.
But like the best 16-year-old basketball player is not always the best 19-year-old basketball player. Harrison Barnes is the ultimate example of that. Of like he just didn't get any better. Jabari Parker is a good example. But even then, these next 2-3 years are just loaded.
The Victor W. guy, you've got Cade Cunningham, you've got Amani Bates. I know has been like Amani Bates might have a little Thonmaker potential to him. Because he's just been 2 years ago. They were like, this guy's incredible, and I still see him, and he looks the exact same. I don't know.
Yeah, Imani's problem is at his competition level. He's yet to really play up to on the big levels. But he is. I mean, he did have a game where I think he scored like 55 of the team's 60 points or something like that. It was ridiculous.
Yeah, that's a lot.
He is 6'10" and he can shoot, so that's always. There's a lot of guys. Cade is number one guy this year. Cade is a freak. Cade is. There was that comp. There's that the comp to Brandon Roy that Luka was getting. That actually is Cade. Like if Brandon Roy was 6'7", that's what he is, and he's a better passer. He's a freak. He's insanely strong. But he's up there. We got like AJ Griffin. That's a guy you don't hear about as much because he's not. Sometimes these guys don't play on the big shoe circuits, and the scouts will, and the website guys will drop them, which is it's really. Jalen Johnson was a guy like that this year. He's like a 6'9" point guard who didn't play, so they just dropped him down in the 20s, even though he's a freak. AJ Griffin is Adrian Griffin's son, and looks like Jimmy Butler, but is 6'8". Like physically, and like he's a monster. Paolo Banchero is another guy. He's just a monster. There's just so many guys who look like number one level picks. This is way in the future. DeJuan Wagner's son was a freshman and was playing on like a varsity team on a good team and was averaging like 48 points a game. He's a monster. So there's so many guys coming. There's a lot of guys. Yannick and Zosa. Oh, DeJuan Wagner Jr. is who I was talking about. Looks like one of the best prospects on earth.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Did you say averaged 40 points a game?
Something like that. He's shooting like 35 footers as a freshman and hitting them. Yeah,
that's intriguing.
Yeah, but that's
DeJuan Wagner
unless
was
they
awesome. People don't remember he was awesome.
DeJuan Wagner was great, and his son is taller than him, so that's.
Well, there you go. All right, well, we got to wrap this up. We are hitting an hour here. But, Brian, I really appreciate it, man. This was good insight on an enormous amount of topics.
Yeah, it's awesome to talk about basketball for an hour, and I don't know a single thing of what we're talking about. I just like, oh, yeah, that sounds good. Precious, you say. Let me write that down.
So, guys for following along at Cosmos on Twitter. It'll obviously be in the description of the show, but he's got a Patreon, so if you want to subscribe and check out all the his big boards and the scouting reports and all that stuff, he gets my stamp of approval. It's a very small list of people that get my stamp of approval for talking about the draft.
For example, neither Eric or us are on.
No, I got the straight reject.
Definitely not. You guys don't have my stamp of approval for anything.
Yeah,
I've noticed. We've noticed. Yeah, we've noticed.
Yeah.
Anything, Brian, you want to plug or anything else before we get out?
basically done with my big board finally. I'm gonna post it on Patreon, and then it'll be free the week of the draft. But for now, it's gonna be on Patreon. I don't have tiers or anything because I don't really feel like I do enough content to justify that. So it's just whatever you want to pay. And then
throw a few bucks in there. Throw a few bucks. Take a look at all his stuff. I
should have some more draft stuff on Dime around the draft. I don't know. I'm trying to decide if I want to actually write about Denny Avdia, who kind of bores me. He's a good basketball player. He's just not.
Well, now the Serbians have turned on you, man. They've turned on you.
Unbelievable.
I do like
he had
him.
it all. He lost it.
I'm just not a big. He's hard to write about because he is what he is. It's kind of a hard guy to really dig in and write 1,000 words about. Yeah, I'm kind of it. I'll be doing more stuff. Once this draft is over, I'll be able to do more 21-21 stuff, which is much more exciting.
Cool. Cosmos, we're doing a big live draft show. We're gonna have you on it. I mean, I'll hit you up about that here in a couple weeks. But we do it really cool live during the draft, and we've done these for all of our other sports so far, and they've been awesome. So, everybody else, thanks for tuning in. Don't forget, if you're watching on YouTube, which we highly recommend you do, the better quality, video quality, everything else, go ahead and hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, leave a comment, let us know who you want to take in this year's draft, and who Brian talked you into through this show. Everybody else, thanks so much. We'll see you all next time.